Mosaic is better than expected, Reborn crushes it out of the park, and Deathstroke is considerably more badass than Batman? Let's check everything out. What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is Shelf Appeal, where I go over the books that I picked up this week and give you an idea what they're all about and whether there's something you should go back to the shop for. To start off with, we're going to go with Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, issue number 6. And this sees us picking up where the last story arc really left us. And that is John Stewart and the rest of the Green Lantern Corps rallying over towards Warworld to try and take on the Sinestro Corps. And we feel like those Green Lanterns are going to make a big impact. You know, they're going to go rescue Guy Gardner. And what we run into is Hal Jordan as a one-man Air Force army, kind of going in and kicking ass. And that's one of my favorite things about Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. It's definitely more about the Hal Jordan than the actual Green Lantern Corps. I can't wait till everything wraps up and everybody's all back together and we can focus on what's really going on with Hal, because I find the parts with Hal and Sinestro the most engaging. But that's always the case with Green Lantern books. It's a book I'm continuing to read, but I'm still a little hesitant as to whether I'd recommend it to everybody else. Then we're going to hop over to Gwenpool number 7, and this sees us basically return to the main storyline of Gwenpool and really her role as the leader of the MODOK organization. And we finally see the shadowy man behind the money. But what we really run into is the fact that he really wants things to be normal, and that's why he's paying them like dump trucks full of money, like he says. I'm not really sure where this storyline's going to go. Overall, the art is still great. The story, it's still funny in most points in time. You know, the aliens and this pig, that's pretty sweet. But it's one of those things where at any point you might be able to fall off this book, or you might be able to jump on. It's just that kind of story. Pick it up if it seems like something that you're interested in. And then we make our way over to Moon Knight number 7, and we see Mark Spector out and about as 3 of his other personalities, and this results in all kinds of different bloodshed, you know, a battle against space wolves. There's so much going on in this book, and it's just an insane, twisted take on how everything's going, and I really like the way that Jeff Lemire is putting this all together, so I'm interested to see when we dive back into the main Mark Spector portion, and we kind of put these multiple characters by the wayside until they come out and serve their own purpose. Definitely a book I'm going to keep reading, and it's one that, you know, it might be a hiccup on the road, but it's definitely a title that you want to keep your eyes on. Next, we're going to find The Fix number 6, and that's going to basically give us a little bit of backstory and some of the most insane kind of commentary on where we are at in society right now. You get the introduction of a great character in Meth Head Matt, which is absolutely ridiculous. We find out that the mayor of Los Angeles is a habitual masturbator and likes to do it behind the podium, you know, splat. Super adult on that one, kids, so watch out for that. And it really comes down to the fact that the magical, mystical artifact, you know, the MacGuffin of this whole story, happens to be inside a teddy bear and is blatantly inappropriate. And you've got to remember that Nick Spencer is also writing the Captain America books. So this man can do everything. I'm really entertained by it. It's funny. It's definitely a little bit on the fringe as far as the content's concerned, but it's a book that I'm really enjoying. And for you adults out there, it's definitely something you should check out just to get a feel for it. Then we go from The Fix to The Flash, where we're talking about Godspeed and the end of Godspeed, or is it? We finally get the introduction of the new Kid Flash in the terms of Wally West, and the Speed Force gives him his costume, which is pretty sweet. The best thing about this is they're not going to be committing an age-old comic book sin of killing off a villain character too quickly. And what they're going to do is they're going to let August kind of rot in Iron Heights and age like a fine wine or bourbon, something along those lines. And then they're going to bring him out, take him off the shelf, and dust him off to make sure that everybody still remembers that Godspeed is a potential ass kicker, and that's one of the best parts about it. We get to leave this storyline by the wayside and then focus on the developmental aspects of Wally West, who's looking to turn into a pretty compelling character between this book and the Teen Titans Rebirth one. Definitely a book that I recommend people keep up with. It might not necessarily be for everybody. The first story arc was a little drawn out, but you can definitely see where the character development's going, and I really like what Joshua Williamson's doing with it. Overall, it's a book that I have to give a big thumbs up to. Once we're done with Wally West, we end over to Wonder Woman, another WW in this kind of category. And in issue number 8, we kind of miss Wonder Woman entirely, and we get to focus on Barbara Minerva and her little bit of backstory. And this is really fleshing out the character, hopefully in the anticipation of something greater happening as she leads Wonder Woman back to Themyscira. Overall, I found that this was great. I love the backstory that Greg Rucka is kind of working in here. You know, the strong, independent, super intelligent woman that has become this barbaric beast as the cheetah, and then has finally been freed from that particular curse. And I really don't like her dad at the beginning of this whole story arc, and if you read it, I'm sure that you'll understand why. But for a one-shot, it's very well suited for where the storyline's going. And then we see the main pickup of the next issue, which is an odd-numbered issue, issue number 9, which leads us back to present day, and then a new arc in the Year 1 storyline, which is going to be taking place in issue number 10. Definitely well-timed and well-placed, and highly recommended if you want to get a little bit more backstory on Cheetah and her alter ego, Barbara Minerva. And then probably one of the best books of the week is Deathstroke number 4, and I never thought I would be saying that, but Christopher Priest is writing an amazing book. And what we find out is that Slade Wilson, aka Deathstroke, is better than Batman. Yep, definitively proved it, hands down. Everything about the encounter between Batman and Deathstroke, Deathstroke's just like I planned. Just like I planned. And they lure Damian Wayne into a trap, but not a trap, and they're playing this serious cat and mouse game, and you think that Batman's got him cornered, and then finally Deathstroke and Rose have the last laugh. I really enjoy this book. You might not necessarily appreciate where it's coming from. I don't really care because it's just awesome. And the fact that Rose gets out of the shower and Slade's just standing there naked staring out the window wearing a flak jacket is absolutely ridiculous, and I love it. Highly recommend you pick up Deathstroke. After Deathstroke takes on the Bat, we head over to Action Comics 965, where we see Lois coming into the Daily Planet. And you have to wonder, why is Lois at the Daily Planet? And that's because if you've been reading Superwoman and possibly the other Superman titles, you know that Lois Lane is currently also Superwoman, but then she is also mysteriously kind of vanished as part of this whole scheme that's in her own comic book. And then she sent a letter, which Lois read in Superman, and what really comes to the head at this point in time in Action Comics 965 is that there's a whole lot of continuity crossplay that's going on between these individual books. There's references to Superwoman as a book, there's references to Superman as a book, and then previous events in Action Comics as well. And the big thing about this is this continuity going to get confusing? Everybody's kind of like playing with the same toys in the sandbox, and depending on who's executing and who's taking over these storylines, this last page reveal is just like, okay, who's stepping on whose toes? Are we going to get kind of like this covert crossover event that's going to be happening? Or is this just, some people are like, you know what, I really like what you did with that character, and just cherry picking the best for them. This one's kind of hesitant for me, but I still have to recommend the books overall because the storylines that Dan Jurgens have been telling in this book have been great. So stick with it, and I think it's going to pay off in the end. After Action Comics 965, we end up at Detective Comics 942. And what we find in Detective is the culmination of the Night of the Monster Men arc. I have to say that this has been overall underwhelming. It was a great achievement as far as maintaining this entire continuity, this event across all different titles through these 6 issues. But, I mean, the culmination, the fight between Batman and Hugo Strange left me feeling empty. It left me feeling a touch cheated. There was almost nothing really that kind of grabbed me about saying that this is how this should have ended. I mean, it more was like, okay, it ended. Overall, the book is a great culmination, but as far as the event's concerned, it's a bit average. Definitely something, like I mentioned previously, that you can skip and not really worry about much inside the Bat books, unless they reference it a little bit later, but you never know when that's going to happen. Once we get done at Detective, we're going to head over to Doom Patrol number 2, and Doom Patrol number 2 is easily one of my most anticipated titles because Doom Patrol number 1 was absolute insanity. And what I see in Doom Patrol 2 is the slow unraveling of the psyche of a madman. And Gerard Way is putting that on paper with the art of Nick Darrington, and it is just crushing it. While I didn't really appreciate Shade the Changing Girl simply because it was just a bit too out there for me, this is just out there enough. You see the introduction of new characters, the art is on point, and then overall, I really like the way that this little piecemeal storytelling aspect's going. It's like you're slowly taking this ball and you're unwrapping every single layer, and it's just like it's getting crazier and crazier and crazier, but it's somehow getting closer and closer and getting tighter. And I really like the way that that's going. Definitely, I'm on board for the flagship book from Young Animal. Doom Patrol is killing it, and I can't recommend it enough. It might not necessarily be for everybody, but I'm really enjoying it, and you've got to give it a shot. And then once we're done with Doom Patrol, we're going to head over to All-Star Batman. And so issue number 3 sees us kind of take a break from the roadshow, which is Batman and Two-Face. The face-off against Beast is amazing. Formerly KG Beast, now Beast, is awesome. The actual action, the way that Ramita's drawing the action is fantastic. It's once you get Batman out of the cowl and you get these faces kind of interacting, these bodies, that's where he kind of loses me in some respects. There's a lot of backstory that's bringing in context, and that's very good. But, man, when they're rolling down the highway, I want this to be a Michael Bay movie. I want it to be rolling, nonstop action, and that's what was really grabbing me about this. Definitely one of the better titles that's out there from DC Rebirth, but it's just gotta keep cooking with gas, man. That's what was winning me over from the beginning. After Batman gets a beatdown, we're going to hop into the Clone Conspiracy, and the interesting thing about the Clone Conspiracy is not actually Peter Parker and the story that Dan Slott is telling. The art from Jim Cheung is amazing. I really like it a little bit more than I like the main Spider-Man title. I just like it. It feels a little bit better to me, but what we also get is the sense of kind of remorse and regret that goes along with being Peter Parker and Spider-Man, or at least the way that he's been written. The main Clone Conspiracy story, it seems a little off-kilter to me. It's just kind of like, comes up and saddles up next to you and then just pushes you over, making you feel like you're a little bit unstable. And that's really where that's kind of at. It could be good or it could be crap, and we don't know whether it is yet. The big thing about this book is that we're going to do a little bit of retconning of Gwen Stacy and Gwen Stacy's understanding of that fateful moment in Amazing Spider-Man, like way back in the day, when her and the Green Goblin danced on the top of a bridge, and it didn't end so well for her or Peter. So now Gwen Stacy is awake that entire time. This is Dan Slott basically putting his mark on some serious history. It gives you a little bit of context into her character, and if that's a character development that we're using for the Clone Conspiracy, I can't wait to see where that really goes. Because if she has this realization and she doesn't necessarily understand that Peter was trying to help her father, Captain Stacy, when everything happened, oh man, she's going to be coming at this from all the wrong angles, and I'm interested to see how that kind of works. And this is just going to be unfolding over the next 5 months, man. This is going to go till February. It's insane. But after Clone Conspiracy, we're going to get another new number 1, and that is The Lost Boys. And that's a Vertigo title, and to be honest with you, this is a nostalgia pull for me, and I was hoping, against hope, that it was going to be in the same vein. It was going to have the same feel, the same voice as the movie. And I find that Tim Seeley is trying really hard, but it doesn't necessarily catch up to where it was in terms of the continuity. And because it doesn't do that, it really falls a little bit flatter than what I would have really liked. I wanted it to be a bit more gripping. I wanted it to hop into things. And it hopped into things pretty quickly, but it just didn't quite do it enough for me. And while it's only a limited 6-part series, it's immediately one of those situations where it's like, you know what? I probably don't need to be reading this. But one book that I am really surprised about is Mosaic number 1. So this oversized issue shows the introduction of Mosaic, and as a character, this is a very interesting story that you can be telling. You're basically putting an entitled narcissist inside the body of anybody that he really wants to. But this is a very untested, unproven power. So there's a potential that he could become essentially a vast gathering of knowledge that can jump from body to body to body, and he could just collect it all. So there's a lot of different interesting concepts that can play into Mosaic, and it's way better than I expected. It was one of those things where I was just blindsided, and it totally took me off my feet. I wasn't expecting it at all, but hands down, this is one of my big surprise picks for the week. Mosaic number 1, definitely a book to look into, and give a shot. It's all right, man. It's pretty fun. But the book that I was really hoping, against hope, was going to be amazing is Reborn. And Reborn by Mark Millar and Capullo, hands down delivered on that promise. What we get is an actually very interesting story where we see the development of a female character in the last years of her life. We get to relive a little bit of her history. We get to see her in the throes of her death, her expenditure, her demise, and the fragmentation of all those final pieces. Those memories come crashing down as she's reborn into a world where she's a savior. This is a movie. It's a movie. Mark Millar is he's a great pitch man for this kind of stuff. This stuff's going to be a movie in like 5 years or less, just because it's such an interesting and intriguing concept. It'll make it through the first 12 issues and it'll be optioned for a movie. I swear, it's going to be ridiculous what this book does, and the art from Capullo is amazing. I'm gonna have to do a full review on this. I had a bit of an addiction to the variant covers, so I'm not gonna pull all those out right now, but hands down, if you haven't been interested in Reborn, go give it a shot. It's definitely something you're gonna want to grab just to get that kind of experience. When Mark Millar is on, he is on, and Greg Capullo's art is never off. It is always fantastic. I love the way he's drawing it. I like the way they're writing it, and I can't wait to see where this story develops, especially those last few pages where it's just like, okay, who is this beast man? And you're like, oh. It was awesome. Highly recommended. Go pick it up, guys. So those are all the books that I picked up this week and what I thought about them. But I want to know what you guys picked up and what you thought too. So hit me up in the comments and we can chat. We can start that conversation. As always, if you like what you see, hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe right there to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.